Good morning, beautiful people, or if you're watching halfway across the world, good evening. The sun is no longer shining in London, unfortunately. The weather has turned a little bit foul, it is raining, I am getting wet, I am getting raindrops on my glasses, and I am struggling to see properly through these, and it is a bit annoying. But I'm still out here because I wanted to do a video about Logic Pro 11 because it's now out. Everyone's got access to it. A lot of people are talking about these new AI features and that kind of thing, but I kind of wanted to take a bit of a different approach with this video because I feel like a lot of people are talking about why these features are so great, but what they're not really talking about is why Apple has decided to do this in the first place, you know. Apple have made a lot of incremental changes to Logic Pro over the past few years. We've got it on the iPad now. There's a subscription model in terms of payment on the iPad. Apple have introduced lots and lots of new plugins, like a new mastering plugin, that kind of thing. And we've now got AI features. Why are they trying to do all of these things? And I think it's because Apple's mission has always been to make Logic more accessible to everyday people. And I wanted to talk about pricing first of all, because that's a big one for me. And it's a huge, huge point around why I think Logic Pro is now, without question, the best DAW that you can get for your money. You know, every time there's a new version of Logic, every time Apple releases a new major version, so going from 9 to 10, for example, you had to repay that $200 or £150, whatever it was back in the day. And with this new Logic Pro 11 update, it's free. So if you owned Logic Pro 10, and I think Logic Pro 10 was best part of a decade, right? We had that. To upgrade from Logic Pro 10 to Logic Pro 11, you don't have to pay anything. How amazing is that? Like, you don't have to pay anything. You just get all of these new features, this new update completely for free. That just makes it so accessible for everybody. And then if you add on top of that the fact that Logic Pro on iPad, with the introduction of Logic Pro 11, is now on parity in terms of features to Logic on the Mac, there is literally no difference, right? For £4.99 or $5 a month, you can get Logic on the iPad. That's the price of a flat white in central London. For the price of a flat white, you can get a full digital audio workstation that now has pretty much every feature that you could possibly need, including AI features, for the price of a coffee. One coffee a month. It's just a no-brainer. I find it amazing that there are some people that are like, £5 a month, I don't really want to pay that. I pay too much for subscriptions, yet you buy a £4 flat white, £5 flat white every day. It's just a no-brainer. It's so accessible to the everyday person now. And I think what Apple's been trying to do with all these updates is just make Logic Pro accessible to anybody. So the second point I wanted to make is around completeness, as in the completeness of the different features you can get in Logic Pro. Don't know if anybody used Logic Pro 10 years ago, I certainly did, but back then it was sort of a half-baked DAW. You didn't have sort of vintage style EQ emulations like you do now. I think that was only introduced in Logic 10.4, so what, a few years ago? And before then you literally just had the channel EQ and the linear EQ, and that was it for your options of EQ. You know, you've got all of the different emulations of compressors. You've now got multi-effects, which you didn't used to have in Logic. That's still fairly new. Fat FX, the step sequencer, and more recently you've now got a mastering plugin, which again, didn't used to have, that's now new. And so over time, Logic has become more and more complete, right? The biggest thing that Logic was missing, in my view, was a really, really good saturation plugin. Things like the Fab Filter Saturn II, fantastic, or in the world of sound toys, you've got the Decapitator plugin, that sort of thing. You're just yearning for something like that in Logic, but trying to use the distortion plugins, that kind of thing, to get close just wasn't really cutting the mustard. And now Apple's released Chroma Glow, which is an AI-based saturation plugin that emulates tube and lots of different sort of analog circuits to try and get that nice warmth to your recordings. And that's, again, another sort of gap that's been plugged by Apple very recently. And we've gotten to a point now where, in my mind, Logic basically has everything you could possibly want. I can't think of any sort of plugin or effect or any sort of major feature or functionality that Logic is missing now. It's so complete, and that's a massive point. Why is it a massive point? Well, if you're just starting out, if you're in education and you buy Logic, in the past you will have had to also splash out extra cash for third-party plugins. You might want to buy a vintage style EQ, you might want to buy a good saturation plugin. All of those costs add up, and you're talking $30, $40 for a plugin, right? Especially if you buy from Waves or whatever. Now, you buy Logic, you don't need to buy anything else. You literally don't need to buy anything else. I can't express how amazing I think that is. Like, it's incredible. You buy Logic, you buy it once, that's it. £5 a month, you have everything you could possibly need to make a radio ready song. Like, from an accessibility point of view, it's bringing the possibility of making radio ready music at home to anybody, literally anybody. People that are kids still in school, right? If you've got a house iPad, you can make a radio ready song. You just have to learn how to do it. It's just incredible. Right, I need to switch hands because my arm is aching and I didn't invest in a selfie stick or anything like that, but at least I've got some good quality audio now. So for those of you complaining that my last video wasn't very good quality, well, hopefully it should be a lot better now. Let me know in the comments how the sound is. And right, change hands. So the third point I wanted to make was around these AI features, and I've just heard so many people say, why is Apple introducing all of these AI features? It's going to harm creativity. A lot of people just are going to get lazy. They're not going to write their own music. They're just going to get AI to do it. And because AI is trained on algorithms on past music, everything's just going to sound the same, and as a result we're going to lose creativity going forward, and we're going to lose originality and that kind of thing. But that's only if you let these AI tools take over, right? The way I look at it is, if you're 12, 15, 20 years old, it doesn't really matter your age, and you're learning an instrument and you're learning how to record music at home, and let's say you can sing and you can play acoustic guitar, but tracking your song and you're imagining having some sort of drums in the song, or you're imagining having a part that plays keys or even a bass part, right? And you can't actually execute those ideas, but you want to come up with something just to feel out the song and maybe give it to a musician or a friend and say, look, I'm looking for something like this. I think that's a great use of AI, right? So you can record your acoustic ballad into Logic. You can then use the AI drummer or the bass or the keyboards session players, and you can use the different sort of settings and like functionality available to come up with what you think sounds like a part that might fit the right style for your song. And you can then give that to an actual keyboardist or an actual bass player, that kind of thing, and say, look, I'd like something like this. Can you write in this sort of style? I think if you're in a band as well, right, that's the big one. If you're in a band and you've got maybe one guy that's the main songwriter, like in my band, for example, I've been writing songs for about 10, 15 years. So if I come to the band with a song and I'm imagining what the bass part might do or what the drums might do, instead of like trying to mimic that through ridiculous hand and face movements, I can put something into Logic and tweak the AI session player to create something similar to what I'm after. I can then give that to my drummer or give that to my bassist and go, write something along these lines, because it sort of fits the style and the mood and the groove of what I think we should go for in this song. So I wouldn't necessarily look at AI as just a negative thing. There are positive ways that it can be used. And if you're somebody that only knows how to play maybe an acoustic guitar or sing a little bit, but you're envisioning some production that's greater than what you can play or what you can pull off at the time, I think that AI session players are a great way of sort of trying to bring that idea to life a little bit more. And so in terms of accessibility, going back to that point of accessibility, it's just amazing for people that are yearning to be in a band or yearning to produce their own music to sort of get going with that, right? It lubricates that idea to final production process. Sorry, I had to switch hands again. I really need to get a selfie stick or something like that. Jesus Christ. Shoulders are knackered. And because they're knackered, I'm going to try and wrap this video up in the next sort of minute or two. That was just my initial sort of brain farts on why I think Logic Pro is just like unrivaled today. It's just amazing. I will be doing a video at some point this week, sort of sharing my screen, talking about some of the features and coming at it from less of a sort of tutorial, this is how you use it, because there's plenty of YouTubers and videos out there that explain that way better than I would, but more coming at it from the point of view is, when would you actually use these new features and in what sort of formats would they be useful? So for example, stem splitter, how useful would that be if you were, for example, in a band and you wanted to retain the live element of your sound, but you wanted to mix the song like a proper modern day production, right? You want to treat the drums separately, you want to treat the bass separately with its own sort of plugins and EQ and compression, right? You want to do the same with the vocals, same with the guitars. That's sort of what I'm going to be planning for the next video. But yeah, I think from an accessibility point of view, accessibility point of view, I think Logic Pro is just unrivaled. I think if you're on the off chance that you're watching this and you're thinking, do I spend a £5 a month on Logic Pro? Do it. It's an absolute no-brainer. And literally you can just use the house iPad. If you're lucky enough that your family has a house iPad or something like that, you can just download it and start using it straight away. It's just fantastic. But I just wanted to talk about Apple's mission and how I think that they're doing the right thing, because Apple are a company where, you know, they're always in the news for one thing or another. Sometimes we're questioning their morals and ethics, but on this particular front, I think they've done a really good job, and I think they deserve a pat on the back for what they've done with Logic Pro and how they've progressed it to date to be something that anyone can pick up and use. So good Apple, well done. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. It's raining, not ideal. Gonna get indoors now. See you in a bit. 5 and you know it's true.